Good afternoon, everybody. It's 21st of June, 2025. It's 10 minutes after 1 o'clock. And just want to show you something before I start getting into the news. If you see sort of like, man, why do you park right there? Anyway, you see the very end of this bus. If you look right up above there, you see the emblem inside of the mall. It's called Green City. It says KFC. I don't know if you see that right below MacB, the little heart up there. You can't see it in a minute. Damn trucks anyway. Always the elements are after me. Why is that? Anyway, there's a KFC over there. I just wanted to point that out. And then if you look even closer over here, in this direction, on the other corner, that's one corner by the way. I think that's I don't know if that's KFC. I think there's actually two KFCs over here on this side. And if you look in the in the distance in the building over there, it's maybe too far away. Maybe I have to walk a little bit up over here just to show you. Trying to make a point. Why doesn't the camera zoom in? I do have an expensive camera I'm not using. It's too heavy. But anyhow, if you can see that over there, there's a KFC over there. And look at right over here. There's another KFC. So there's there's 4 KFCs, all probably within 100 meters of each other. And look up here. I have a patriotic moment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the KFCs from America and to the chicken for which it stands, nuggets and free drinks for all. Anyway, they don't really have so much humor over here in Belarus. I don't think they would even understand what the heck I'm just talking about. Anyway, it's there's really good things about Belarusians, and of course a lot about the country, as I always explain. There's a very few small things compared to like in the United States. But most people here have a little bit less humor. Most, I'm not saying all, most. So you kind of joke around a little bit. They kind of don't understand it. I don't know. Maybe unless they know you and they start understanding that you're kind of a joker like me. So anyway, let's keep going over here. Okay. The foreign minister of Iran, Aragachi, sounds Japanese, he put out that what Trump is saying is fake news. Well, can you imagine that? I just made a video, and it's kind of actually has something to do from that video. That Trump, he puts out fake news. He certainly puts out fake news. I guess he's a politician now, and so that's how that goes. But anyway, Iran and the United States are not negotiating. There are no negotiations. So when Trump says, "Oh yes, they're talking and they want to make a deal," and they don't, there's nothing whatsoever about that. Thought I'd show you up here. There's, if you can see it kind of clearly, very cute young lady, cosmonaut from Belarus, went up in space, lost in space. Danger, 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 Will Robinson. Anyway, this is a building center over here. I was just inside. I got a little teeny roller. The builders screwed up a little bit of something in my apartment, so I got to fix it. Got just a little roller. Here's a lot of these things. Look at the ground coverage. I mean, the clearance on this. These things, they put American these SUVs, they put them to shame. These are just these little Ladas. And I remember in Germany, when American four-wheel drives, Jeeps, when they get stuck in the snow or something, they get a Lada to pull them out. They get a Russian vehicle. I don't know why the four-wheel drive is better. It just is. But American soldiers were always talking about that. They get the Russian vehicles to come and pull them out. And well, along with that, I'll maybe add this. I didn't put it in my notes, but. Russia is now turning to be like the most prominent weapons sellers in the world, because one reason is they're approved in combat, and a lot of the American stuff has a bunch of bells and whistles and whatnot, but they don't really perform that well. Like the Abrams tank is not made for combat. It's made for being impressive and having impressive stats, very much like the F-35s. And I don't know. Did Iran shoot down F-35s? Somebody was saying, well, where's the proof of that? I don't really know. Houthis, I don't know. It might be talk. Iran is normally, you know, much more honest compared to the United States. Again, that's across the street this time. That's where Prigozhin, who was the guy that ran, the founder of Wagner military group, he stayed there. Maybe one of the last hotels he stayed in before somehow his helicopter with all the other important people from Wagner was somehow blown up and didn't quite make it, I guess. So anyway, let me keep going with the news here. Anyway, that was fake news. Donald Trump, I mean, he's put that out before. And so Iran and the US are not talking at all, and Iran says they will not talk. They will not talk to Israel, and they will not talk to the United States until Israel stops attacking Iran. And they said the United States is complicit with that, and it's obvious that it is. They're very, very much complicit, even far more than you can imagine, just like Germany is complicit. Great Britain is greatly complicit, not as much as the USA, but Germany is also involved in this attack on Iran. And I don't know, apparently, I was thinking France was not in it, but now France is, I don't know, France, Macron, these people are jokers anyway. They go one day they say something and the next day they say exactly the opposite. You don't ever know what the heck they're talking about. So I don't know about Macron. I think I have something about Macron here a little bit later. So, but anyway, I think he said that they're co-conspirators, and they definitely are. And I think Tucker Carlson actually exposed that when he was talking to Ted Cruz, and when they're talking about it, Tucker Carlson, he does it so innocently. He can expose a lot of things from people very innocently, and it's not like, I don't know, it's like it just comes up. He said, we, you know, because Ted Cruz said we, you know, who was attacking Iran, and Ted Cruz said we, and he said we, but the U.S. official word was that we're not involved. You know, obviously we're very definitely involved, and there's massive amounts of weapons shipments going to Israel even as we speak. They're sending bombs like nobody's business to Israel, and the United States is sending, I mean, they're even sending more fuel tankers. I mean, they're getting ready for a very, very, very massive military campaign against Iran. Iran, I believe it's a little bit bigger than Iraq, and of course Iraq was already a very weakened country before the United States went in there. The United States normally only attacks very weak countries. The United States cannot beat, for example, Russia or even China. They cannot beat a real enemy. And a lot of people are coming out and saying the United States has not even been on the side of a winning war since World War II. And of course, if you unless you believe Donald Trump, you know, it was actually Russia that won that war. When Russia wants to win a war, Russia wins a war. And it's not like Vladimir Lenin, who was actually an agent of Germany, as I've already said, when they shipped him over there from Zurich in a sealed train car to end the war. That was the main reason, to get Russia out of the war. It's kind of like, when you start to think about it, maybe it's sort of a trend, and they all know this in Europe and the United States, the entire West, that if you're going to go to war, matter of fact, Donald Trump even said that if you go to war with Russia, you're going to lose. So the Russians have a much different mentality than the United States or any of these other places, you know, and so does the Houthis. That's why Donald Trump stuck his tail between his legs and ran away from the Houthi, because he started realizing that he can't beat the Houthi. Look at these flowers and the color of the leaves. Look at that. Burgundy colored leaves and flowers. I'm going to have to put that on my poster picture of this video. I have to come back. Okay. So and I guess we might be the entire West. And we're all kind of thinking, oh, well, you know, kind of and as a matter of fact, some people say, very intelligent people, of course, by the way, they tell me, they say, you know, like what Donald Trump said, and that's more fake news. So you got to be really aware of anything that Donald Trump says. And it's not like I hate Donald Trump. I like a lot of his domestic things. There's a lot of good things about Donald Trump. But Donald Trump, I hate to say this, but Donald Trump lies. Does that surprise anybody? You know, well, politicians, and I guess maybe now Donald Trump has become a politician. Normally he was a businessman who was in a politician's place, but I guess I would call him a politician now, because he lies too, you know. Maybe not as much as like Macron or Starmer or Merz or some of those other people. But it's also completely different if you're thinking about like Lukashenko and Putin. I don't really know that they've really lied. One time, I remember this, and I was thinking, hey, Putin lied. He said that they had no intention of invading Ukraine, and that was like maybe 10 days or maybe even a week before they moved into Ukraine. And maybe that is not a lie. Maybe he didn't have any intention to do so at that time. Maybe he was hoping that some other outcome would come about. And it's very much like Donald Trump. Even Max Blumenthal, he made a video, or somebody was interviewing him, and he said that he doesn't think that Donald Trump even knows what he's going to be doing. And but Donald Trump hinted at that by saying, well, he'll wait till the last second to make a decision. But thus far, you don't move all those assets over there, you know, that is costing huge sums of money. We're talking well over probably $1 billion to send all those fuel tanking, those tankers, you call them tankers, I guess, aerial fuel tankers, and all those ships, all those soldiers, all those weapons, massive amounts of armament. You don't send that over there. That's very expensive. And say, oh, well, just come on home, you know. He very much intends to make this attack on Iran. And the things that were holding him back, of course, was his base is against it, obviously. Another thing, if you attack some of these nuclear places, you're going to get some very heavy duty and very bad radioactivity that might even be felt in the United States, so you never know it, because this stuff is just not going to sit in one place. He might even consult some scientists and say, well, we want that radiation just to fall on Iran. How are we going to do that? Because we love those people so much. No? Just because they have the right under international law to enrich uranium, maybe they have a little bit too much of it, but it doesn't specify how much they're allowed to have and how much they're not allowed to have. Maybe Iran was enriching uranium and having a little bit more of a stockpile because they feared something was going to happen with their uranium enrichment. So maybe they were storing some of it. And I don't know if it's enough to make many nuclear bombs or whatever. And I'll tell you what, and I think the enrichment has to be, you know, and they're not even telling us this. Because I think they enriched quite a bit to 60%, and I believe it has to be up to 95%. And of course you have to do even more enriching, and by the time you actually do that, it's going to be a much less amount. As you know, it's how that goes, I guess. And Donald Trump does not even want them to be allowed to enrich to 6%. So anyway, so a lot of things getting exposed. So let's keep going here. Ted Cruz. Yeah, every single day, weapons are flooding into Israel right now like nobody's business, and there's no financial oversight. So are you hearing about how much money worth of weapons they're sending at this minute? Matter of fact, they're still bombing Gaza. That's still going. They're still doing other ops, and of course they killed another Iranian military person. I guess it was last night, or matter of fact, I think it was very early this morning. So it wasn't that long ago. It was less than 12 hours ago from this time right now when I'm making this video, I believe. It was some of the last news that came in anyway. And we're talking, you know, you think about all this money that Joe Biden was sending to Ukraine, and now Donald Trump. I wonder when somebody is going to come out and say, how much money is Donald Trump sending to Israel? But you know, it's a much different deal right now, because you have Republicans and you have Democrats both supporting this. As some people say, you have the best Congress that money can buy. And of course, Israel bought it. And you know what they bought it with? They bought it with American taxpayers' money. So you ask yourself, well, how in the heck does that work? How does Israel get the taxpayers' money from the United States to buy the American politicians? How does that work? And as you all know, I've mentioned all that, and you guys know this stuff, it's a big, huge money laundering scheme. You know, the money goes to Israel. And it makes you wonder, who set that up? You know, when did that happen? I think maybe during the President Johnson years. As I've talked about President Johnson, I'm just highly suspecting that. And President Johnson, was the first Jewish president, maybe the only, well, I don't know. A lot of people are saying Donald Trump is also probably a closet Jew, I guess is what they call them. And we won't even find out, maybe until Donald Trump is long past. Like a lot of people did not know this about President Johnson. And now just, we're not supposed to even talk about that. And I think, was it Kennedy? John F. Kennedy was the only Catholic president. All the other ones have been Protestant. Except, of course, for Johnson. And, you know, a lot of suspicious things about that Johnson knew about that and all of the dirty dealings. He's like I said, he's not a very clean guy. President Johnson, a lot of that stuff was hidden from the American people to protect the office of the presidency, of course, and all, you know, not to protect the American people or the history. But they say he was complicit in the end of John F. Kennedy. And he's basically saying, you make me president, I'll give you your goddamn war. And maybe Kennedy did not want to get fully involved. And there's a lot of stuff about Israel, and Kennedy, you know, was too close and inspecting Israel and trying to keep them from making a nuclear bomb. It's kind of like a repeat of, maybe Israel's looking back at their duplicity in the history, and they're thinking that everybody is like that. It's just like putting command centers and weapons and things like that below hospitals. Israel accused Hamas of doing that. You know what? Because they themselves do that. I guess it's like they think everybody is. It's like a liar doesn't believe in anybody else. I guess that's that expression. I think they also say that in a U2 song. So I guess that fits appropriately when it comes to Israel. Let's keep going here. So, and it's like if you look, like for example, the similar circumstances between Joe Biden and Israel, and Ukraine, and Donald Trump and Israel, you know, it's like I always say, how close, you know, at least in ideology, obviously, and maybe they're nearly identical, just with different names, the ideology of those in the government and how they run their societies and their people in Ukraine as it is in Israel. It's pretty much, you know, brainwash your people that you are the master race, God's chosen people, you know? Slava Israeli. I don't know. Zeke Israel. So many people have made comparisons, you know, that Israel and the Nazi regime from Germany are very, very similar. And of course, you know, I don't know, is that some kind of a complex psychology? You become like your enemy? I don't know. So, two peas in a pod. Israel and Ukraine. Two peas in a pod right now. Zelensky, he's dejected right now. Says, I guess now it's time for me to give up. It's time. I don't know. He's not going to probably give up. You know, these people, it's not him dying. He gets lots of privilege, lots of money. You know, he wanted all that attention and all that. You know, he doesn't. You have to be honest. Netanyahu, that's a difference. He probably does, to a certain extent, he does care about the Jewish people in Israel. And Zelensky, he honestly does not give a crap about the Ukrainian people. He will sacrifice all of them. He'll sacrifice, you know, the only times when he acts like he cares is only for publicity things, is to act like, oh, he's a great guy that cares about his country and all that. Zelensky cares about money and he cares about power, you know, and he's with that clique. You know, anybody that cares about their country would not have let it happen like he's already let it happen. And so many people, to include Tulsi Gabbard and so many other people, Donald Trump, they know that there was no chance for Ukraine to beat Russia. And many people said, even if you had the entire power of the United States involved, there's still no chance. And Donald Trump kind of even says, you know, you don't go to war against Russia because you're not going to win. That's what he said at the beginning. You know, Donald Trump's playing a tough guy right now, but I think he's just playing. He's playing a tough guy, you know. And when he talks about Russia, any kind of punishment, he talks about sanctions. Has nothing to, you know, and I don't know. They weakened Iraq with sanctions before they moved in. And, you know, the United States was even scared crapless of Iraq. So it makes you really wonder, you know, They're not going to go after Russia. That's certain. And it's a strange thing that they're going to go after. They're going to go after Iran apparently, unless some great thing happens. Who knows? Anyway, it's electric. Matter of fact, that's not one of the kind you rent. I guess that lady bought her own. So, yes. So I don't know. A lot of people are saying, well, if Donald Trump couldn't beat Yemen, the Houthi, how does he think he's going to beat Iran? You know, some people are saying that he's going to use nuclear bombs. I think if anyone who uses a nuclear bomb, they've lost. They've already lost right there. He'd lost in any kind of public opinion in anywhere in the world. Donald Trump's going to lose his base. Anyway. And Max Blumenthal, he said that Donald Trump's desire to go to war for Netanyahu is causing a sea change, you know, and I don't know. I'm hearing other people using this word sea change. I don't know. I never heard that before, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm a dummy. I don't know everything. A sea change. Is it sea change or is it sea change as in the ocean? Why do they use that? I think there's probably other metaphors you can use. So, we'll go walk over here. Let's go to church. Looks like a Catholic church. So let's go to the Catholic church, people. Talking about churches, as you know, there's some sort of a big deal going on right now in Armenia. There's, I guess, a very wealthy, I think, the most wealthy businessman in Armenia, and he is pro-Orthodox type church. And they don't call it the Orthodox Church of Armenia or the Armenian Orthodox Church or whatever. It's just I think it's just called an Armenian Church or whatever, but I believe it's Orthodox. And I don't even know if they're really that aligned to Russia. I haven't really seen so much about that. But anyway, I think they don't have anything against Russia, and that is their crime. And this Pashnat or whatever this joker's name was, this guy that the people of Armenia don't even like. He's very disliked by the majority of the people in Armenia, very much so. And I guess he arrested this guy, this business guy, that did really nothing wrong. And it's apparent that this guy's trying, the leader of Armenia, he's trying to get control of the church of Armenia. And a lot of people are talking. That's really, really big news. Even Scott Ritter was talking about that. I'm not following the issue quite so much. It's sort of a deal between Armenia, not so much even Russia, but it's about power struggle, so to speak, inside of Armenia. And you might want to check it out. Scott Ritter and other people, not so much really in the West, but it's all over in Russia and the news over here. So if you're interested, just letting you know that. Okay. And I think it was also, let me see, make sure. I think it was Max Blumenthal, yes. Max Blumenthal, as many people are saying, that said nobody wants this war. Nobody wants this war except Israel. Israel wants this war. And when I say Israel, I mean Netanyahu and his buddies. I don't think that even the Israeli people, for the most part, if you probably did a survey, referendum type over there, I'm sure a lot of them would say they don't really want this war. But it makes you really wonder how successful, because they've been doing this, and trust me, it was even since the 1980s. A lot of people are just going back to 1993, but as far as them trying to drum up and saying that Iran is making a nuclear bomb, I know for a fact it goes back into the 1980s, and I remembered that because it was 1984, and you know what? How can't you remember the year 1984? George Orwell-ish type of thing, you know. And but maybe that was only in newspapers. I don't know if that was Netanyahu himself really saying that, or if that was somebody in Iran. But these people are so convinced since 1984 that Iran is 2 weeks away from having a nuclear bomb. And Tulsi Gabbard recently, as you know, a lot of people are talking about her. Donald Trump probably got really pissed off and maybe was threatening her. I don't know. This is a theory. This is a possible theory. I'm not saying that I believe it myself because I don't have the evidence, but it's a very possible theory you know, since Tulsi Gabbard, a lot of people had the highest respect for her. Most people did, just a day or so ago. And then I think it was yesterday she came out and said something about that she's been misinterpreted by the press. And she worded it in such a way, and you have to be very careful, because Tulsi Gabbard is quite intelligent, or maybe somebody that wrote this for her was very intelligent, and it sounds like she's fully behind Donald Trump to bomb Iran. But that's not necessarily the case. And you also get that impression that she says that Iran is building a nuclear bomb. But if you really watch those words, it is not there. It is not there. She does not come out and say she wants Iran to be bombed, and she does not even say that she believes that Iran is building a nuclear bomb. What she said is she believes that Iran can very quickly build a nuclear bomb if they want to. And I don't know, maybe that's what Iran was doing with 60%, only 60% uranium enrichment instead of like whatever it is, 95%, whatever is actually needed. I don't know. How long does it take? I'm not a scientist. But anyway, now people are calling her a warmonger. They're calling her the Colin Powell of the Trump administration. And, you know, I was started thinking, yeah, actually, I knew Colin Powell. I didn't know him as a buddy. Yeah, buddy, let's go out and get some women. No, but I worked for Colin Powell. And, you know, I drove him around mostly, like I've mentioned in other videos, you know, when his driver's name is Otis. So I think it even, well, it was until he died from, you know, from the, I'm not allowed to say that, but he died from this time period when we had a pandemic, and he got a treatment for that pandemic, and I think soon right after that he died from the sickness that was of that pandemic that he took the medicine for, against, or whatever like that. But anyway, Colin Powell, you know, and I remember him, you know, what did I work for him a couple of times, you know, and went to, you know, interesting. He was in the building, what is it called? I don't want to get it mixed up with other buildings. It was in the Abrams complex in Frankfurt. At that time he was, I think, in charge of 3rd Corps, but he was, you know, like the highest rank. He was a lieutenant general, and but he was it's very strange, because this guy was a lieutenant general, and there are 4-star generals that do not have as much power as he does, you know? Or was he a major general at that time? He might have only been a major general, but it's like he carried a lot of weight. It was really strange, because it's like, why is he so, you know, and like you're looking at all these other higher ranking generals, and they're kind of below Colin Powell. So he was something already, even back in those days. And, but he was actually quite a nice guy, and I think that's one reason why he was in the clique with a lot of those people, because he's actually a very decent guy to talk to and all that. And you know, I made some little mistakes and things like that, and I was bringing a colonel to see him, and some big staffer from Washington D.C., some civilian lady. I have no idea. It might have even been some Catherine Austin Fitz or somebody. I have no idea. I didn't even know in those days. I wasn't really, what was I back then? I was a corporal. And anyway, and then other times, you know, bringing him around to different places and all that. Like I said, they sent me up there when his regular driver was on leave and things like that. Okay, anyway, that's enough of that stuff. Okay, so Netanyahu, one other thing. Only Israel wants the war. Many are saying, like Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and of course it's absolutely true. Anybody that follows this knows that a U.S./Israel war against Iran is it's the recurring wet dream of Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu has dreamed about this for many decades. Netanyahu, he goes to bed at night, he pees and he takes a bath, he takes a shower. All he thinks about is how is he going to destroy Iran. That's his dream. His dream is to destroy Iran, you know? And it's like, He wants to dominate the region, and beyond that, I really don't understand. I mean, it's very strange. He thinks that, you know, maybe Iran stands in the way of his master of the universe. But, you know, then he's got Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants to be the master of the universe. Donald Trump wants to be the master of the world. And maybe Netanyahu just wants to be the complete master of the Middle East. And, of course, he wants to kick out all the Palestinians, as you know, and take all that. I don't know, a very nasty guy, nasty. Satan Yahoo, as Uta, one of the subscribers, calls him Satan Yahoo. Very good name for the guy, because that's where he certainly is. I've never seen such a dastardly leader on planet Earth except for Netanyahu. There's probably, I tell you what, Hitler was nowhere near as bad as Netanyahu. I feel that for a fact, an absolute fact. Maybe Adolf was a Girl Scout compared to Netanyahu. Okay. So let's see. So yes. Anyway, if Donald Trump actually does go to war, and like I said, my theory was that Israel, it's probably beyond theory now. A lot of people are saying, is it fact? You know, like Colonel McGregor, and I'm sure Jeffrey Sachs, Israel put him in office. Nobody said that. I said that from the very beginning, because the deep state didn't put Donald Trump in office. So who's the kingmakers? The kingmakers of the deep state or Israel? And Israel put him in. And Israel has got a lot of power now again. So I think they lost some power during the Obama years. Obama was not like a rabid Zionist like Donald Trump. You know, well, let's be honest, Donald Trump is a Zionist. It's just as Ted Cruz is a Zionist and Mike Huckabee. And normally you have to be a Zionist to become president of the United States. I don't really know how Obama made it. That's at least a good thing about Obama, that he was not a rabid Zionist. And Biden, for the most part, is a Zionist. But anyway, I don't think Biden knew what he was, to be honest with you. Okay. Somebody was asking Donald Trump about Tulsi Gabbard, and Tulsi's wrong. She's wrong. And he, you know, the Russian intelligence says they find no evidence that Iran is making a nuclear bomb. All of the American intelligence agencies, you know, even before Tulsi Gabbard, they said they have no evidence of Iran making a nuclear bomb. You have the IAEA saying they have no evidence that Iran is making a bomb. But then there's probably one entity that says, yes, they are, and that's Israel. Has Israel... Now, they've never lied to the United States, ever have they? Remember, you find these tapes about Benjamin Netanyahu saying, you take out Saddam Hussein, and I guarantee you, like there'll be peace in the Middle East and all that reverberation. I know how many times you can find all these lies from Netanyahu, and here he is again. How many times has he come up and said Iran is 2 weeks away? You can find it. It goes, I don't know, there's maybe 10 times that he's come in front of Congress or whatever, at least 3 or 4 of those times, and said that Iran is 2 weeks away from a nuclear bomb. And I don't know, it makes you just sick. Makes you just sick of this stuff. But anyway, how long do I have to say that? Everybody knows that. But, oh, now it's true, though. And Tulsi never said that they're 2 weeks away. Tulsi said they could quickly make a nuclear bomb. I don't even know if she said 2 weeks or 2 months that they possibly could. How does Tulsi even know? How does anybody know? It's just like, who was it? Some very high intelligence person. Oh, it was Larry Johnson, who's in contact with a lot of the CIA people that are working in the CIA today. And they told him they don't have any evidence of anything about Iran and if they're making a bomb, how far away they are. So, but I guess Donald Trump, he seemed to know more than everybody else. Oh, the Israelis, they don't lie. Okay. What I talked about that already? I said. Okay, Foreign Minister Aragachi, he's repeating what many have said, that Trump used fake negotiations. Iran is sure of this, and they probably are true, that Donald Trump was faking these negotiations, faking that he was negotiating about this, and to use it as cover for an attack on Iran. And as it's absolutely 100% positive, undeniable fact that the United States heavily helped Israel, and Donald Trump, trying to, what is it, plausible denial? That's not even plausible denial. Donald Trump even know. You can't act that Donald Trump didn't know. Ted Cruz knew that. What, are they all keeping a secret away from Donald Trump? I highly doubt that. Donald Trump knew. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has turned out, he never was before, but he's now a big liar. He's a big liar and he's a deceiver. And I say that, and I say that in all truth. So it makes you really wonder when you start lying and deceiving about things like that. Well, what else is he going to lie and deceive about? What do they have, that expression? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And Iran is not going to fall for this stuff. As a matter of fact, they said they don't trust the United States anymore. Do you think Russia trusts the United States? I'll tell you what, Russia, they trust the United States only to a certain point, to where if it's something, they can afford to lose it. And that's how you always do. That's when you invest your money too. You don't invest your money unless you can afford to lose that money. That's the way I see it anyway. Sometimes you have to. That's a better view there than that lady walking over the side with her bag and her dog here. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the exact words from Aragachi was, "We don't know how we can trust them anymore." How many times has the West, and I'm not just talking about the United States, how many times has the West lied to and screwed over Iran? There's many more times too. The French did it. You can just look it up. They screw each other over, the West. They're a bunch of people. They're a bunch of greedy liars. I tell you, it's if there's any problems, living here in Belarus, things you don't like or whatever like that, and of course the things that maybe you don't like or the problems you see or whatever, they're all small compared to the West. I tell you what, the government, because it's happened to me in Germany, they'll lie to you and they'll screw you over to get your money a lot of time. And it's happened to me before, and like a lot of time you pay for something, and it's happened to me, you better keep the receipts, even if it's like a year or so later, you have some entity from the German government saying, you didn't pay, you didn't pay for this, and then you go in there and you show them their receipts that, that they issue to you from when you were paying, and it's like, governments are like that anyway. I was in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they were trying to take more customs duty than what they're allowed to take from me, and I had to. It took me 3 years, literally 3 years, and they had to pay my money back. I had to go to the Prime Minister's office. They had to set up a council. They had to have some of the highest people, and it's like, here I am, a foreigner, and then you know what I told them? You know what I told them in this meeting? I told them that I'll go to CNN. I'll go to the news. And they were angry at me. They were throwing paper at me and calling me names and stuff like that. And then I get this thing and I said, oh crap, that's not going to go very well. And I can't do shit. I can't do anything. And then I get some letter that said, the Customs Appeal Board has decided unanimously that you are to get your money back. It's like, what? Okay. Anyway. Rita, if you heard that, that's one of the stories that I was going to tell you. So, anyway. And Putin, what did Putin say yesterday? He had, that was part of that speech, that St. Petersburg Economic Forum sort of a deal. This is what he said about the Ukraine war. He said, third parties are not interested in ending the conflict. They are interested in using Ukraine for their own purposes. Gee, which third parties is he talking about? He's talking a little bit, I don't know if the word is cryptic or whatever, but he's talking about the United States, for God's sakes. And, Europe, they make no qualms. They say, they flat out, at least honest, coming out and saying they want to keep this conflict going. They want to keep flooding Ukraine with weapons. their goal is, and Donald Trump is at least smart enough to know that that's not going to work. You can go, and it's the strange thing is Russia is getting richer. During this whole time in the war with all these sanctions, Russia is getting wealthier. Russia is getting more powerful. They're getting more powerful militarily. They're getting more powerful economically. They're getting more powerful in foreign relations. I mean, this is obvious. These are just things you can see right in front of your own eyes, But yet and Europe is getting weaker, and yet it's like, how are we getting weaker? We're sending more money to Ukraine. We're robbing our citizens. How can it possibly be that we're going to just tax them even more? That's another thing. Macron, that's what I was going to say when he came out and said something. So anyway, those were the exact words. That was a quote from Putin, by the way. They are not interested in using, or they are interested in using Ukraine as their own purposes. And a tool. Don't you get your tool out on me. Anyway, Macron said, Macron, he's duplicitous. He says one thing one day, the other thing the next day. You sound, oh, this guy's starting to sound like he makes sense. And then he comes back and he says exactly the opposite. It shows how much of an idiot he really is. It's kind of weird. Here I am. I'm just some friggin' regular guy, and he was in finance. He worked for Rothschilds. He was a Rothschilds banker. Well, that should tell you something too, doesn't it there? Remember that Charlie Hebdo? And when I am Charlie and all that sort of a thing, and it was like this thing, and they said that they were out to get to the Jews and stuff, but I really don't know. Anyway, that was a big operation anyway, and Rothschilds made a lot of money from that one. It's about that publication that nobody really ever paid attention. I think it was Charlie Hebdo. So anyhow, let's keep going here a little bit. Macron, he said we have to invest more, and what he's meaning is more in military. And like even Vladimir Putin just said just days ago, these people, they put this money into military, and they're inventing this threat, and I don't know. Do you think they're really? It's so, the thing that really gets me is, are they really so incredibly stupid? Do they really think Russia wants to attack? I kind of think that it's just a ploy, and I think Vladimir Putin said as much, that these people, they know Russia has no plans, no desire, they're not going to attack, and I don't even think that Europe is going to necessarily attack Russia. They might really, really, really try to provoke Russia, and you have to be careful what you wish for. You might get it, but this is to fleece their own citizens. That's what Vladimir Putin says. They want to build up this big threat of Russia, and then so they're going to force everybody to pay higher and higher taxes and fleece the people, more ways for them to get money. And a lot of that money does go into their pockets. Trust me, they got these secret bank accounts. You all know that. I've talked about, you heard about the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers and all that. Like Cameron, that's probably one reason why he had to resign as prime minister from the UK, is when they found out that he was involved in this Panama Papers, and he had some millions, and he was saying, oh, that was from my father. I didn't even know about that. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, you didn't know. You didn't know there's a couple million down there. Your father put over there. Yeah, I did. I just didn't know that. How, I mean, you can misplace a couple million British pounds. I mean, it's easy. Everybody does it, right? Gosh dang. So anyway, he said we have to invest more, and like, what is it? This Rutte, it's they all get together and they say, well, I'll tell you what, let me tell you another thing. Let me tell you something else. And this is just on a smaller scale, but it's the same sort of a deal. Like I told you, I lived in the Caribbean, and I lived, the first years, I lived on an island, on a small island. They have like 17 islands, and this is one of the main islands. And on that island, there's a lot of, they say that's the island where the billionaires go to get away from the millionaires. So it's a lot of rich people there with their yachts and things. They have a big harbor there of rich people's yachts. We're having, some of the richest people in the world. They have them on Mystique. Mick Jagger actually lives there permanently, and for a while, at least during the COVID years, Bryan Adams was living there. Tommy Hilfiger has a house. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a house. The royal family of Great Britain has a house. Many, 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 many more. And as a matter of fact, the ones I was most associated with were the ones that had the biggest house there, and I don't even want to say names, or nothing like that, but it's, you wouldn't know the names anyway. So the richest people are names you've never heard of anyhow. So, but they have, I don't know, 10 times more property than Bryan Adams has. But Bryan Adams has a really nice house. Bryan Adams' house, on one side of the house is the Atlantic, on the other side of the house is the Caribbean Sea. So he's kind of got, in a very thin part of the Mustique is the island it's called. As a matter of fact, that was even at Pierce Brosnan was in some movie and they're talking about that. It's an exclusive island. You can't really get there unless you're invited. I was invited. I only went there one time. But there's like a day or so in the year when regular people can go there, and they probably have them under wraps and a lot of security or something, you know, because, you know, you're not supposed to mess around with the rich people. So anyway, I was going to say, I was in a, I was going to the Office of Finance from the country, from that country, and that I was in on the main island in the capital, and I was in a room. It was very strange. I was in, and it was not in a meeting room. They probably, I'll tell you what, I was sitting out, and it was just myself and another person that I actually knew. But when I came in, and it was like in the entry room, and there was nobody else anywhere near that area, I walked into this room and I sat down on a chair and I was listening because it was quiet and I could hear everything in the conversation. And this guy, he kind of, you would think he's just some regular guy, but a lot of people know better. This is going to be a little bit of a story. But anyway, he and his sister owned a little grocery store on this one island, you know, not the one that's exclusive where you can't go to unless you're invited, but it's a different island, and they were building that one up also only for super rich people. Part of that island was already sectioned off, and they had security, you know, and rich people, you know, own that one part, and they have their pampering places and stuff, for a golf course. And by the way, it was Donald Trump golf course. Donald Trump sponsored that golf course. It was called Donald Trump International Golf Course. Donald Trump Casino, also Donald Trump Casino on the same island. If that gives you some indication about what I'm talking about, rich people. And anyway, but I was, he lived a lot of time on that island. The guy is very wealthy, and he acts like he's just a regular kind of guy, a black guy, of course. He's a local, and he and his sister owned a small supermarket. Well, actually, at that time, it was the biggest supermarket on that island, even though it wasn't really that big, and they ripped you off on prices royally. They royally ripped you off on the prices on that. Things were at least double than what they were on the main island. But anyway, they had a large piece of land that they owned it, so they had, you know, a lot, and they were building apartments like you wouldn't believe. They got $1,000 a month for each apartment that they were renting through the company that was building this big major resort for rich people. And so they were getting, I don't know, maybe to the score of $50,000 a month from the rental places there. They made some good money from that store. But anyway, that concerns what I was going to get to. I was sitting there, and there's somebody from the government talking to this guy, and he's the guy that mostly runs all the rentals and builds the thing. You know, gets builders and it builds these apartments and things for all these people, workers that are, you know, that are from the West, from France and USA and all that they put into these apartments, and who knows what other things anyway. But anyway, the lady was talking to him, and I was really shocked about what I was hearing. They were talking about the prices because the government, they owned this one supermarket. There's a couple private supermarkets, and then there was one called the government supermarket, you know, and the prices were about the same, I guess, as the other places. And but this lady was talking to this guy about these really, really super low prices that they are going to sell to this guy for, that has the place on that island where they drastically overcharge everybody. So, say for example, if you go, and because I know this for a fact, if you go and you pay $2 for a can of tomato juice on the mainland, and you go to his shop and you want to buy the same can of tomato juice, you pay $7. Does that sound like, it's not like a like a 10% markup or 20 or 30 or 40. I mean, you're talking a couple 100% markup. And anyway, this lady is talking about how she's going to give him products for even a much lower price. And she's even telling him, and you can charge such and such amount for this. So it's like really strange. It's like, this is how you can rip people off. And it's like somebody from the government telling this guy how he can rip people off, basically, you know, even overcharge him probably even more money. It's absolutely incredible. And this guy, he would be making tremendous, tremendous profits. And it's just absolutely unbelievable. So when you talk, you know, when you get a few things into the business world and you're sitting there thinking, you know, you get a product and you're like I was doing, I had coffee, I was growing coffee and all that. And I don't even know what kind of profit I was actually making. I didn't ever, I don't know, we did figure out what it is, but it's definitely not anywhere close to 100%, you know, and you got to pay your taxes and all kinds of other things. But manometer, this guy's making money hand over fist. He has a house on one house. He has a matter of fact, he even had a house right near where I was renting at one time on the mainland. He had his house on that other island. He has a house in America. I don't even know if he has even more houses. I mean, it's incredible. Anyway, that's how the world works. I'm just trying to get to that because I'm near the end of this video, by the way. So, Macron. Okay. Zelensky. Yes, well, we all know that the EU, they're getting lots of money from war. Zelensky reaps billions of dollars. Nobody knows how rich Zelensky is. Nobody knows. Like I said, a lot of people were thinking like maybe a year ago by now. I don't even know. I'm not keeping track of the months or whatever. But he was first announced that when he had like, I don't know, $2.8 billion. And then he got to 5 billion. And that's when they started, and it was very, very soon after that. And then there were projections that he had at that time, that was like a year or two ago, that he had 10 billion. And it really makes you wonder what he's got now, you know, and you're buying all of these properties. Everybody knows he's buying properties. He puts them in his parents' name. He puts them in his wife's name. He has companies that are owned by his wife. Apparently it's in her name that has the company to buy the houses. So they're trying to find all these different ways to hide these properties all over the world that Zelensky is buying. You know, it's just incredible. And these are all facts. It's been proven. So... but these people don't care. The whole deal is Macron doesn't care, Zelensky doesn't care. These people don't give a crap about their people of their country. They don't care about their suffering. You know, that's a big difference, like I said, between living over here and then living over in the West. You know, the system. What am I blaming the people or the system? The system over there, it dictates that everybody there is going to get rich. They're going for whatever they possibly can, get as rich as possible, steal as much money or whatever, you know, put a stamp of legality on it. Oh, that this is okay. You know, you get a cut. In Ukraine, it's just understood as it goes down the line, you know, the money, you know, I get my cut, this person gets a cut, that gets a cut. And essentially it works that way in a lot of countries. It worked that way also in that Caribbean island like I'm talking about too. Some people are getting their cuts and things like that too. Oh, there's some guy with dreadlocks, just like in the Caribbean. Long dreadlocks, long-haired hippie guy. Anyway, other than that, the United States is sending gigantic forces, I guess, to places such as Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. So Trump hasn't made his decision. I mean, isn't it strange? Wouldn't you start spending all that money and sending all of those massive, massive assets after you've made the decision? You know, maybe you would send some before you make the decision. He's going to have everything in place. And I thought Donald Trump was kind of a conservative guy, trying to save money-wise, at least fiscally conservative. You know, and it's not cheap, you know. What money really does a military get for you? I mean, are they building something? Do they build, you know, automobiles or whatever the deal is? Or does it cost you money to have a military? So what is Donald Trump doing anyway? I don't know. To me, the writing is on the wall. I don't know if there's anything that's going to dissuade him. I think like this move, maybe this, I would presume he had some sort of a threat against Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know, tell her you better at least use some language to make it sound like you are on board, or else you lose your job. And I will see that it's just like what they said to Ron Paul. Mitt Romney said, and that was put out by his campaign manager, that Ron Paul will not report anything negative about Mitt Romney, or else they will destroy him, destroy his reputation. He'll be out of politics, and I don't know. They make stuff up. You know how they can do this. Oh boy, it's a real rat race out there in the real world, I tell you people. So it's like I don't know. And then of course, I think the reason, when I was seeing this tape by Max Blumenthal, somebody was interviewing Max Blumenthal. I think the name of the video is Donald Trump Afraid of Israel? And of course, the truth of the matter might be that he certainly is. I think every politician is scared of Israel. Israel can make or break you. They can ruin you in the United States. They run America. They run the politicians of America that run. I'll tell you what, it's not a very good thing. But that's how that is. And do you guys know about that? I guess knowledge is power. I don't know, not enough power. Gotta have a lot of knowledge, and a lot of people have to have a lot of knowledge to know what the heck is going on and what to do about it. So anyway, that's about all I have to say. And thanks for joining me. I guess probably understands English. I don't know. Give me a big smile. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.